Hey everybody, welcome to Watches with Dennis, and today, as we're getting near the end of 2021, I want to cover my list of the top 5 biggest watch dramas of 2021. Obviously, it's my arbitrary list. It's just the 5 things that stood out most to me as I engaged with the hobby over the year, and so let's just go ahead and get going. So my number 5, I'm going to go in reverse order. My number 5 is the Chicago AD or authorized dealer that was accused of selling directly to the gray market. So this came out really pretty early in 2021. There was an authorized dealer. They didn't just deal in Rolex. They dealt in a number of other high luxury brands, including Patek Philippe. However, a former employee came forward and accused those at the AD of actually selling to foreign gray market dealers so that they could make more money than they would selling directly to the clients. Now, obviously, why is this drama would be this sort of fed into a narrative that's existed for quite a period of time, especially over the last few years, in the watch collecting community, which is the game is rigged. You know, we often hear jokes about how you need to get on the list with the authorized dealer, varying from the probably relatively practical, buying lots of jewelry and watches you don't want to end up getting the watches you do, to sending your wife in to do cardinal favors for the AD in order to jump the line. But here was this example of an instance of people are like, I told you so. See, these authorized dealers, they're selling to these third-party providers that get to sell even higher to us. It's not fair. They're making more money than Rolex thinks that they're going to. They're going above MSRP on their sales prices. Now, I think this case actually resolved pretty quickly over the last few months, and I couldn't really tell why it seemed to resolve in terms of did they reach a settlement or whatnot. The reason why I've kept it at number 5 on my list, though, is we didn't actually see like a cascade of accusations against other ADs based off of this. I think that's where people thought it might be going, and we didn't end up seeing that. So in the end, it didn't really manifest beyond this one particular AD. But one of the things that I think as a takeaway that sort of had a lasting repercussion across the hobby is that Rolex didn't catch this. This was an employee at the AD who came forward and made these accusations. And so I think the fear still exists that this might be happening. Rolex doesn't really have a good way of detecting whether or not it is. And so part of the reason why there are such shortages lately is because demand is so high, some ADs may be cheating the system. My number 4 in my list of top 5 biggest watch dramas of 2021 would be the 1709 Ming and Messina Lab collaboration woes. Now, this actually, there were a lot of woes that kind of came together to make this an interesting little piece of dramatic pie. So the first thing really fell on the Messina Lab side, having to do with the sale of these watches. And for those that don't recall, the 1709 was sort of the last hurrah of the 17 series of Ming. There is what I'm going to call mainline 1709s that were sold first but shipped second. And then there were these collaboration watches of which 200 units were made, 150 in black dial and 50 in honey dial in terms of the variants. But the first day that the sale was supposed to happen through Messina Lab's website, the website crashed. They weren't able to do the sale, so they postponed it. Then the next time they tried to do the sale, the site went down again. Messina Lab said they were subject to a DDoS attack. And so then from there, they changed the sale parameters entirely and went to a lottery system where they contacted people to give them the opportunity to buy the watch. So that was the start of the woes. Then the watches got made, they got shipped to the buyers, and many of the buyers, not all of them, but more than an insignificant number, pretty quickly reported that there were hour hand alignment issues. The hour hand wasn't staying in sync with time as time advanced or as they set the watch. And so that was woe number 2, was this mechanical issue. Woe number 3 was the initial response wasn't stellar. And by that I mean there was one fairly high-level Instagram influencer who had one of these watches and had this issue, and someone with Ming responded to them, and the response was charitably defensive. There were accusations that something may have happened in shipping, which to people who had the watch seemed fairly laughable, especially given how many people had already come forward. There were some others that sort of piled on and said Ming hasn't had great responses in the past. Examples of someone who had a different watch model, but a watch that had some loom challenges, and then they weren't happy and they sent it back to Ming for a repair, and Ming ended up just keeping the watch and refunding them. And so it's sort of a Ming for a while has been a bit of a darling micro brand. It's one of the few that's really taken off. Their watches have sold more used than they do new. And it's been greatly credited due to social media. And this has been an interesting instance of live by social media, die by social media, because it's really social media where all this drama manifested and turned on Ming. Now, ultimately, I only have this at number 4 on my list in the bottom half because I think they weathered this in the end relatively well. Ming allowed everyone to send the watches back at no cost. They repaired them. They figured out the solution before the mainline 1709s went out. I've only heard of one mainline 1709 having an hour hand issue, and that Ming got right on top of that for that buyer. The warranties were extended, I believe, by an additional year for everyone who bought the collaboration watch. They all got free straps because of the delay in getting the watch resolved. So it's just, they've really moved forward to address this. And I think by and large, that's all going to be seen as in the past. That they ultimately, while they had a rocky beginning of the management, in the end, they ended up managing it pretty well. There will still be some long-term repercussions, I think. Probably the main one is people are going to be very suspicious of Ming and new complications and movements that they roll out. Because one of the big questions I think a lot of people have had is, why wasn't this properly tested? There were so many watches that had a problem that they didn't catch any of this before they left the factory is seen as a pretty big red flag. But beyond that, the customer service complaints and such, I think that's mostly going to be in the past. Though, the internet does have a long memory, so people will always be reminding on every sale that Ming hasn't always done the best job at communicating when there's bad news with the public. But ultimately, this one did seem to shake out pretty well. Number 3 on my top 5 list of watch dramas for 2021 is the most recent one, and that would be the Tiffany Patek Philippe Nautilus 5711. So I'm not going to focus on like the charity auction with the number 1 unit that went for over all in $6.5 million, though there's probably drama to be had there, but rather the issue of just Patek doing this. So as a reminder, Patek had publicly stated that the 5711 had an extensive wait list. I believe they announced, they being Patek, a 10-year wait list for this watch. They were moving away from the 5711. They didn't want to be in the business of just making 5711s. And then during Watches and Wonders early in 2021, there was an announcement of, there's going to be this last hurrah for the 5711. And they unveiled a limited edition green dialed model that some people swooned over and others kind of thought, okay, well, one last little cash grab before we move on. And then here we are, end of the year, and boom, here's a Tiffany themed one. And it's so crass, I think, is what's really triggered a lot of people with it. And had this been another watchmaker, a low-end watchmaker, it'd have been one thing. But it's Patek Philippe, number 1 of the Holy Trinity, high horology powerhouse. And here they are. They had a limited run of 5711s, and now here's an even more limited run of more 5711s. And I think people are just like, are you really going to get past this? Or are you just seeing all these dollar signs and you're just reaching out and grabbing what you can? Now, when I saw this, or when I wanted to put something along these lines in my top 5 list, I had another one, so you can kind of consider it as an honorable mention because it's not going to be higher up on my top 5. But that was earlier this year when Audemars Piguet announced their Black Panther watch. And a lot of the same complaints came about. This is too much of a luxury brand. They're demeaning themselves by collaborating with Marvel. The reason why I picked the Tiffany, though, over the Black Panther is, love it or hate it, be it the watch itself or the relationship between AP and Marvel, at least the watch was unique. At least they did something creative. The Tiffany watch looks like someone went into Photoshop, changed their color picker tool from green to Tiffany blue, and then did the bucket dump on the dial. And there you go. Here's your new watch. $50,000 from Patek, and you're going to be paying more than that because you ain't getting it from Patek, or I believe they're actually selling them through Tiffany. Regardless, the point being is this was a really low effort change up for another, I guess, a final hurrah on the 5711, and that's why I think people are annoyed, and I would say rightly so. But regardless of your opinion on if it was a good move or a bad move, it was a dramatic move, so it's on the list. Item number 2 on my top 5 biggest watch dramas of 2021 is the Rolex Explorer 2's 50th anniversary. Oh boy, you got to think all the way back again to Watches and Wonders 2021 because this one was a ways back and we've had a long year. But this one was a pretty big deal to folks. So Rolex, it's the Explorer 2's 50th birthday. They got to be doing something cool, right? I mean, we saw all sorts of ideas from they're going to change the case size, they're going to change something about the case, maybe something about the bracelet, maybe something in precious metals. I thought some of the other realistic ideas were a dial color change, or maybe the GMT hand being in Rolex green instead of orange. Something to really celebrate this big milestone. And instead, we got nothing. Well, not really nothing. They did put in a new movement into the watch. But this was a given. Everyone knew the new movement was going to finally go in because it's been going in other watches. Aesthetically, there was basically no change. I think the watch is something like a millimeter thinner thanks to the new movement. And I believe they changed the taper down on the bracelet by a millimeter. That's all I really remember about it. I know when I saw this new 50th anniversary version and the one that has now been retired, and side by side, I couldn't tell the difference. They looked identical to me. And I was not alone in that. A lot of people were like, what the heck is going on? It's the 50th birthday. Where's the celebration? The regular Explorer had substantive changes that were announced during Watches and Wonders. And I think everyone's just left scratching their heads like, why'd you do all this with the regular Explorer when it was the Explorer 2's big date? And I don't know why, but it remained a pretty big point of drama throughout Watches and Wonders and really in the subsequent weeks since then. My number one piece of top 5 watch dramas of 2021 is the Timepiece Gentleman Blackout. And I don't think this is very surprising to anyone who follows YouTube. I do have an analysis video of that Blackout, so I'm not going to really harp on that itself here. Just as a quick summary, the Timepiece Gentleman is a YouTuber, does sort of day in the life of a gray market dealer. They went silent for a week. They have a storefront. The storefront was actually deserted. The product was not there anymore. Lots of concern and accusations that maybe they did what's called a runner. They had a lot of consignment watches. People were supposedly not hearing back from them. Ultimately, they came out with a video saying it was all for charity. And then when that backfired, they came out with an apology video. The reason why I'm putting it as top drama is sort of threefold. One, this one ran longer than everything else. All these other ones, by and large, went maybe a couple of weeks, maybe a month. Timepiece Gentleman still gets talked about today. The other thing is it kind of struck at two different things, separate from the drama of what Timepiece Gentleman had done. One was on the gray market side. We learned from a lot of gray market dealers that there were lots of concerned customers, a lot of blowback against the consignment model, a lot of people starting to think, you know what, this isn't as trustworthy as we thought it was. Maybe these dealers are more shady or fly by night than we realized. And so lots of concern there. Then on the YouTube front, it was just oversaturation city. We saw people doing live streams, constantly saying it was going to be about Timepiece Gentleman, and maybe the content even wasn't that. We saw video drops from a multitude of YouTubers that were talking about the same thing over and over. A lot of this during Blackout Week. So there isn't any new news, but people are just saying they're regurgitating the same things over and over. And honestly, I think a lot of YouTubers or YouTube's reputation for watch commentary really took a hit because a lot of people were looking at this and like, why do you all keep pushing all this content? You're not saying anything new. There was lots of good content that did come out, but we saw people put up videos and then delete them or make them private because they got blowback on whose side they took or whether or not they said anything important. And all of that just really manifested, it left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths that it was way too much about the clicks and not enough about actually delivering meaningful news. And so that in and of itself has had quite a bit of drama for those of us who actually engage in the YouTube format. But anyway, those are my top 5 biggest watch dramas of 2021. I'd love to know what you guys think. I definitely left things off, obviously, because I stayed to 5. So I'd like to know other ideas, other dramas that I overlooked. So please comment below with any of those. And otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a like. It helps me out, helps my analytics out. And if you want to be notified when I have new videos, just click that subscribe button and you'll get notified via that. And otherwise, I just want to say have a great day, everybody. Take care.